What is going on, Vikings fans? Welcome back to the Purple and Gold Bar Show. I am your host, Supreme Overlord, aka Mr. AI Man 3000, aka Mr. Purple and Gold Bars, at your service. Let's get this first slide up here. Where is it? Slide one. Ha! All right, guys. So today, like I told you guys, I really wanted to make sure that. Sorry. I got to make sure. Good gravy. All right. So now we got all that taken care of. So I got the backup recording going on there. All right. We got Vikings versus Steelers in Dublin. We got to go through it. We're going to go through an offensive play calling breakdown because I think it paints a pretty clear picture, and I think we need to go through it because of all the hot takes I've been seeing from a bunch of people, mainstream media and not. Now, first off, I'll give you guys my first genuine impression after I was able to actually watch the game. As you guys know, I was at church, so I only actually got to see live the last 13 minutes of the game. So it was really difficult for me to come up with any other conclusion other than this team is, regardless of injuries and stuff, this team is more than capable of giving us a chance to win every single game. It just means that we have to put things together. And then on the other side, it just shows that we have a lot of growing pains and adversity to overcome, injuries and backup play included, right? So outside of those two initial takes, I really dove in. Now, I think regardless of how people feel, I think this was an incredibly fun game. I think it was a heck of a display of overcoming adversity. There was a lot of situations where a lot of teams would have given up, and the Vikings never did. There was a lot of defensive plays that made the game maintain in that state of we still have a chance to bring this back. There were multiple times when the Steelers early in the first half and then early in the third quarter where they could have easily taken over, and we stopped a fourth down, got turnover on downs, we got a block punt or a block kick, a field goal. A lot of these things are just signs of the talent that we have in all three phases of the game, right? Our special teams was huge this week, right? They did a great job of getting us great field position at times. They also did a great job with all the extra stuff, the dirty work, right, on the returns for the other team, as well as with that blocked field goal, right? So, or extra point, whatever it was, field goal. But anyways, so my first impression is that despite as ugly as this game was, I think it was a hell of a game. I think that we showed a lot of character, and I think it was a game for the ages. It's definitely a situation because I get confused, right? Because there are a lot of teams that struggle in the first half, and then come back and make a win, or come back and almost get a comeback. And the reaction is usually like, oh my God, what a freaking comeback. Can you believe the talent on that game? Can you believe the arm on that quarterback? All these like positive outcomes from the exact situation that we were in, right? So our jaded fans really confuse me, but at the same time I totally understand, because when you're that jaded, it's difficult to find happiness in basically anything, right? So I think that those takes, those comments that you're going to see floating around is a reflection of that, because anybody that knows football, anybody that loves football in general, like I was a football fan first. Like I fell in love with Adrian Peterson, and then I fell in love with superstars of the game, Tom Brady, Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, Julio Jones, like just I was more about the superstars, but I fell in love with the game first and how um like I would watch every single game and I would watch every team and be like, whoa, this is awesome. Like some one team would be really good at running, aka the Vikings. Another team would have an incredible quarterback, Carson Palmer is just in Ocho Cinco, you know what I mean? Like that ability to just kind of like bring it back to just the backyard football and just throw just throw a crap ton of passes to Ocho, and Ocho's ability to, as he says, always get open, right? So I was enamored with all different aspects of football. I remember seeing flawed teams like the New York Giants roll into the playoffs where nobody believed them then, and then the perfect path ended up just opening up in front of them, and the spectacular plays and luck was on their side at the right time, and it gave us an incredible playoff run and Super Bowl winner that if you're a true football fan, you kind of have to sit back and be like, wow, the incredibleness of this game, like the not the incredible, the outcomes and the things that are just pure out of left field and that just cannot be imagined, the things that can come out in reality when we all can do all the football math and it seems blatantly obvious who's going to win and who's going to lose. The way that the game plays out is always been something that I've always found incredible, right? So that's why I find a little weird with how people are characterizing this game. Yeah, it was not a pretty game, of course. I knew going into the season that we're going to be seeing a lot of flashes and a ton of growing pains, but I was always banking that the quality of this roster, the quality of this defense, the quality of our coaching will always have us in a position to win the game, regardless of how we play and how much we struggle at times and how much we actually play well, right? We've seen basically the emergence of like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of season starting to play out, right? We have games where we look incredibly polished and poised in certain ways, and we come out on top. And then we see some extremely ugly plays that or games that just give us very little to hope for. But the one thing that has been constant in all four of our games is the fact that regardless of the situations that we are in, this defense and the quality of this roster, the special teams, the heart of this team has always given us a chance to bring the game back and win. In the Falcons game, our defense held that garbage team to 15 points all the way to like 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, right? So bad teams don't do that, right? It just shows, it's a sign that we are still growing and developing in ways that we didn't um or didn't face last year. That was the benefit of having a strong roster and a slightly above average quarterback, right? Now we have essentially the same situation, except for we have a rookie quarterback and a slightly below average quarterback at backup, right? So we're going to see adversity in a lot of different ways. And the one thing that I learned from this team from last year is that it does not matter what adversity, it does not matter how many times we get punched in the face, we will respond. We don't always win, but the fact that we respond is an incredible thing. I remember the Christian Ponder days. I remember the Matt Castle days. I remember the days where we did not respond, and it was obvious that we just did not have that heart. We did not have that passion, and we did not not have that ability then, and it was frustrating. And now we do. Something that a lot of teams, especially in the bottom half of the league, wish that at the very least, can we just have a shot to win? Because that's better than the garbage that they endure an entire season, right? So that is one massive takeaway that I get from this game. And now I really want to dive into the offensive breakdown and play calling, because I think one, if you just look at the raw numbers, it looks bad, but I think that if we kind of take a little bit of context, um, we can draw some really good conclusions, right? So again, I think that this season going forward is going to be the season dubbed the Mr. Heckle, or the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde season, where throughout this entire season we're going to look like world beaters at times, and then we're also going to look like teams that have no clue, like a team that has no clue but has a lot of heart and push regardless of what's going on. But that is nor here nor there. It doesn't make the sting or the pain of a loss go away. But regardless, I thought it was a great game regardless. Once I've watched it 3 times now. So I was able to, one, disconnect from my angry Vikings fan that I tend to try to, that I always naturally try to go to, but I have to force myself away from getting angry at these situations, saying, I would have done this, I would have done that. And then as I watched it again and I stepped back and I started to become more rational, I started to see some things, good and bad. So let's move into the next slide here. Slide 2. All right, so slide 2. Let me remove that from studio. So quick takeaways. It was a pass heavy plan. It was a situation that because of a hole that we dug, and it makes perfect sense that this is how it went down. 46 passes, 20 runs, 6 sacks were a massive factor in our ability to stay committed to the run. I saw a lot of times where, I don't know, because it's difficult to say just on the alignment and the way that the offensive line and the players are all lined up to assume, oh, that was definitely going to be a running play. But it seemed to me there was a lot of times where Carson was checking out of a running play potentially and going to a quick check down or something like that to avoid the pressure or whatever he was seeing on the field. So that played a small factor in the fact that we moved away from the running game at times. When we look at it, it was a 63.9% of the plays were passes, and that is just unacceptable. When we have a guy that can run the ball as dynamic as Jordan Mason can, that is something that we can't do. I know as Vikings fans, and during the growing up a Vikings fan during the Adrian Peterson era, it was, it was almost even aggravating at times where we would overcommit or really give our running game a chance to develop even when we were behind, right? And it sucks because now when we want them to show a little bit more commitment to the run, they tend to shy away from it. They tend to audible out and move into quick passes. But as we saw yesterday from the Steelers, a quick pass, a nice slant or a screen is just as good as a run if called properly. So some of those plays, I saw a bunch of passes out of the backfield to Jordan Mason, which made a big factor, right? So maybe we can increase, if we incorporate those passing plays, maybe we can reduce it to like 60% to 40% run, which is not ideal. I feel like we need to be more in that 50-50 or 45-55 in being mostly on the run. I was definitely hollering at the rooftops last week, and I will continue to say this, that this offense must run through Jordan Mason. If it does not, we will struggle. It is imperative that we prepare for that situation regardless of how the opposite team responds. 2, another big factor is the fact that this O-line continues to suffer with injuries, right? And two, and then in a sub factor, Chris, I keep forgetting his last name, but I keep remembering his first name. But Chris, our offensive line coach, bro, with the amount of injuries that we're dealing with and how it becomes a factor, how do you not prepare our offensive line, their back with us with different strategies for those situations, and then how do you not prepare our backups to have to come into the game and then have the O-line ready to switch up to different tactics based on the weaknesses that we would have. Obviously, I feel that inability from our O-line coach and that preparation continues to be a factor. Thank you so much to Rap and whoever made that whoever pointed that out to him, for him to make a video on it, because now that I am aware of that, I am even more critical on this O-line play, and specifically what's going on in these situations where we should be much better prepared, right? After week 2, how do we not always have some sort of game plan ready for the potential injuries that can happen on our O-line too, or if the O-line isn't producing as intended. Like if you have a certain game plan going into the game and it doesn't work, how do you not have a backup plan? How do you not have a tertiary plan? How do you not have a plan for when we have to substitute in backups? And how do you not have a backup plan for that and a tertiary plan for that? That is your sole job, Chris. What is going on? That is one massive factor that I think needs to be constantly evaluated. And I think we need to hire somebody else with a different perspective when it comes to O-line coaching, so that whether they take over for Chris or become the devil's advocate in the room, so that better ideas, better game plans are thought up of and and practiced and prepared for, right? Because something is not right there. I, I don't know if it's overconfidence that, oh, regardless of what's going on, this O line is going to figure it out and we're going to do awesome. I do not know what the case is with our O line coach and their philosophy and their staff, but I am telling you, in my opinion, we need to bring somebody else with a completely different mindset to O-line coaching, and then have them either transition and take over for Chris or be that devil's advocate. Because in college, I learned that if you do not play devil's advocate with your own morale, because everybody thinks their ideas are perfect. Nobody ever thinks, oh man, there's something could go wrong. No, devil's advocate is incredibly playing devil's advocate with yourself or having someone in the group always coming up with a counterpoint, even if they don't believe it themselves, allows you to put your theories, your ideas to the test and actually reflect appropriately, so you don't walk into situations where you get completely mollywopped and it proves that your plan wasn't going to work, right? So if there was more refinement in that area, maybe we would be better prepared. Maybe it's a thing of we need to move on from Chris. I don't know yet. I'm not in the building, so I can't exactly for a fact say that that's the case, but I think it would be a valuable move to go ahead and pick someone up that is a well-respected O-line coach, maybe someone that's maybe older now, that is borderline retirement or something like that, that can come in and have that wisdom and give some more insight, so that these game plans and this O-line preparation gets better. Now, with all that being said, I know the injury bug isn't going to be the thing, hopefully year round, knock on wood, and eventually we will gain our health in all those areas. We aren't the only team that is suffering from O-line injuries this year. And there are, like we saw it in the Packers game last night, right? So the Packers were definitely struggling on O-line. We have other teams that are banged up on O-line, and some teams are making it work, and other teams like ourselves are shooting ourselves in the foot or looking like we're not prepared for these situations. So that's my rant on the O-line and those problems that I think need to be addressed going forward. So another factor because of that O-line play is those 6 sacks ended up stalling multiple drives that could have led to an extra field goal that may have given us a chance to at the end, instead of going for the tie, may have given us a chance to go for the win. A lot of different things. Maybe an actual touchdown goes through, and then the outcome of the game or the end of the game plays out completely different. And that's a result from a lack of preparedness, I feel like, from our backups that were going to go in there. Like, they needed to be better prepared for that situation, because it seemed like at first they were getting trounced, and it wasn't until they had been on the field a little long for them to finally find some groove and make some decent plays, although overall they weren't great. So that is one big factor that needs to be talked about. Now, let's also talk about the interceptions from Carson Wentz. I think Carson Wentz proved to everybody this last week that roughly what we are to expect out of him if we were to make it to the playoffs. A game in which the other team is going to expose what he does wrong and force him to throw the ball at a high with high attempts, and at that point that becomes a recipe for failure for Carson Wentz. I hate to say it, but it is what it is. I've been saying all week, he's a quarterback. It's on his 7th team or 6th team in 6 years for a reason. If it wasn't if he was better than, or if he was as good as some of these idiots that were saying, we need to roll with Carson Wentz, he's our only chance to make the Super Bowl. Um, it it really points to how stupid they are, because they disregard the fact that he was brought on at the very end of August, right? If he was that good, don't you think another team would have picked him up to be their backup or be their insurance policy? No. We needed someone that had a higher floor than the guys that were on the roster, even though they weren't a part of OTAs and training camp, which should tell you a lot, and which should give you the motivation to start waiting for JJ McCarthy to take over this team and start having some reps, because unless he gets these reps, we will not know what he is, and he needs to grow through the fire. That's it. Now, the first interception was a classic Jordan Love interception. Staring down his receiver, ignoring the zone defense and throwing it into a spot, and ignoring what was in front of him, or misseeing what was in front of him. A classic rookie quarterback mistake or veteran backup mistake, right? So that so it is what it is. That played a massive factor. Had he not made that mistake, that drive may have come up with 3 points. It may have at least not caused a turn in momentum. It could have allowed us to keep building on what we were doing, but it did not, and it was a problem. Um, if anybody would have told me that Carson Wentz was going to throw the ball 46 times, I would have told you we lost the game straight up, because I know that this offense needs to run through Jordan Mason. So let's move on to the next slide. Now, when we look at the overall run versus pass, it looks terrible. It looks absolutely terrible. We took 6 sacks because we're holding the ball too long. Carson Wentz is immovable. There were times where he doesn't step into the pocket and into the appropriate spot. He steps to the right or to the left to try to just outrun the pressure, which he just doesn't have the foot speed. He just doesn't have that agility anymore to make that work. But his body goes to what he knows best, and he just doesn't have that. He doesn't have that pocket awareness, that footwork that he needs in order to step forward and move to the right, to the left or the right, whatever is best on what's going on based on the pressure. He just doesn't have that ability, and that's fine. So another big reason why we need to lean on the run, or at the very least, transition into quick passes away from pressure and allow Jordan Mason to pick up yards after the catch, right? Because that's what he's best for. We had 46 attempts, 20 rush attempts, 10 in the first half, 10 in the second half. It's a total pass ratio of 1 to 2.3, with which is horrendous. It needs to be 1 to 1, just about 1 to 1, or 1 to 1.15 or some bullshit like that. Because if we don't run the offense through Jordan Mason, it's going to be a problem. Let's move on. Now, when we look at it on a quarter by quarter distribution, this is what we had. The first quarter was 11 passes, 6 runs, which seems like the first quarter KOC was committed to the run. He wanted to try to establish it. And some of the pressure, like I said, Carson Wentz audibled out into quick passes and stuff like that. But the first quarter seemed to be the most balanced out of all the quarters, right? When it comes to, oh man, the that's not good. That should be over the left, over the yellow. But anyways, kind of love freaking AI renderings. It doesn't always get it right. But anyways, in the second quarter, that's when we started seeing the pressure get to KOC and him revert to his offensive minded nature. And I think when it comes to KOC and his inability to dial running plays and commit to the run, I think that is a bit of a problem for from our expectations than a problem of KOC, to be truthful and honest, because we were the ones that moved off from a defensive minded coach that ran the ball much and was mostly just play action pass. And we yearned for a modern style offensive coach that threw the ball and could create a passing scheme or offense that was modern. And as a result, that's more passes than runs in modern football, right? So, it's hard for him to stick to the run, and he always likes to revert into what he knows best, what we were screaming for as Vikings fans out of a coach, out of an offensive coordinator for years up until we fired Zimmer, right? So we got to keep that in mind, that is what he was hired to do. He doesn't have now. With that being said, I think he still struggles with adapting to what is in front of him, because um although that's what he wants to do, he needs to identify what's in front of him, what the opposition is giving to him, and adjusting properly. Also adjusting based on the players. He doesn't have a veteran quarterback. It's not year one where we had Kirk Cousins, a stable quarterback that can win a game throwing 40 plus times a game, and can win a game with minimal running support, right? We don't have that, and we have to understand that at this moment, while JJ's developing, and with the quarterback that we have as our backup, Carson Wentz, we need to focus more on the run, which is why it's kind of funny that as fans, in the second quarter and third quarter and every quarter that we were throwing the ball more, basically we threw in games like this where we throw the ball more than we run. It's funny how the same guys that were screaming about we don't pass the ball enough are now the ones screaming that we don't run the ball enough. So it's a funny thing to see happen, but it is what it is. We are victims of the moment and our current situation. So it's hard to kind of step back and realize that our hypocrisy when it comes to that, right? But I understand the situation, and I understand why KOC reverted to old ways and started to pass more, especially as the game started to fall apart in certain ways. Outside of that, I feel like when I watched every single offensive drive, I think the play calling wasn't bad, objectively bad. The outcomes were objectively bad. Now, I feel like that KOC's play calling definitely gave us a chance to turn this around and win the game in multiple stages in the game. And that's when Carson Wentz would take a sack. Somebody would come free. Nobody would have a blitz pickup. The running back wouldn't chip on the way out. All these little things that caused the play that he called that would have probably been a good play, because there was a lot of times where like, oh, Jefferson was wide open there. Had Carson noticed him and got it off before he got sacked there, maybe that would have been a first down, right? So there was a lot of times where the play calling was right, but the protection was terrible. The execution was nowhere near to where it needed to be, and that's also a factor that we can't disregard. Now, I don't think there is a single area when it comes to hold on, let me rethink that statement, because in my brain is screaming Carson Wentz and when I'm about to say this, but regardless, I don't think there is in a specific area problem in which was the sole factor in which we lost this game. Because when we, in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, when we started to switch the momentum and started to take over and try to bring this game back, um, all those things that people are complaining about weren't a factor then, right? So the defense came up huge when it needed to. The O-line came up big when it needed to. Jordan Addison, broke a nice route, confused both defenders, and ended up for a nice 81-yard play, right? So there was a lot of great and a lot of bad. Now, execution it has been a massive factor in our ability to take control over games, and in this last situation, take control of that comeback and force overtime. I'm not saying that if we make it to overtime we actually win the game. That I don't know, we didn't get to play it out, so no one can tell us who would have won if that would have been the case. But the fact remains that regardless of everything, we still made a big push to try to bring this back. That's something that lesser teams or bad teams would never have done. Okay, we saw that yesterday. There was a bunch of teams that went down early and just could not do anything to get back. Their defense could not respond. The quarterbacks didn't ignore the previous things and move forward. All these things that are good things still happen, and we can't take that away from this team. Now, when we look at the breakdown of quarter by quarter when it comes to run versus pass, we can see that KOC had the mindset of giving our running attack a chance to develop, right? The first and third quarter are proof of that. They're the most balanced that we play calling that we had in the entire game. In the second quarter, it became a thing of the moment, the situation, having to kind of try, the pressure of having to try to keep the game close was a factor, as well as, like I said earlier, there were a bunch of times that I feel like Carson Wentz checked out of running plays into quick passes because of that. He thought that would be a much better play in that situation. So it is what it is, but the execution on the offense continues to be spotty, but I don't think it's a factor of play calling. I don't think it's a factor of anything else, because there was just so many egregious mistakes on execution that it doesn't matter. Like, the greatest play call could have been called, but if the line doesn't hold up, if the running back doesn't catch the blitz pickup, if they don't chip on the way out, if Carson Wentz doesn't make it through his progression, if he doesn't feel the pressure and dump it off quicker, it doesn't matter, right? So execution, like I said, I've been saying this season is going to be the season, is emerging as a season of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We're going to see, and it's just a sign of where we are as a team. Like I said earlier, last year we had a team that could carry, that proved could carry just about anyone to the playoffs, right? And we saw them overcome adversity. This year, we don't have a slightly above quarterback in our backup, our reclamation project this time. We have a slightly below average quarterback. And we also have a rookie quarterback that's only going to show flashes and a whole bunch of growing pains. So, objectively speaking, our quarterback position is a lower tier than our that we had last year. So in a combination of having a slightly above average quarterback in Sam Darnold, as well as a well-rounded roster that is always going to be able to give us a chance to win, gave us that 14-win season. So, with that said, going forward, I expect a lot more of this up and down roller coaster season, like I've been saying, and not like I said, it's not going to be until late in the season where we start seeing a little bit of consistency start to emerge. That doesn't make any of the bad feelings or the tough losses feel any better. I know it doesn't. I'm not going to lie. When I'm on a roller coaster, the lows feel so bad and I don't ever want to feel them again, but it never stops me from jumping right back in line and going again. And it's the exact same reason why I refuse to let any of those negative emotions or feelings get the better of me and not let them cloud my rational judgment, and know that we are still too small or too early into the season to make any drastic conclusions. Now, mind you, like I said, how do we not prepare our backups and have a backup plan for them, a tertiary plan for them, and then a backup plan and then an extra plan for that? Our backups need to be better prepared to handle these situations. We can't have all these our starters and our defense play at such an incredible high clip and give us that chance for the offense and for these backups to throw a wrench into it. So that is a big factor. And now let's move on to the next slide. Well, this one is a pass rate evolution, right? So 64% in the first quarter, 77.8%, totally expected because we are trying to come back. And then 61 in the third quarter, and in the fourth quarter back up to 70+%, right? Now we can probably shave a little bit of those those percentages in the second and fourth quarter, like I said, because I feel like there was a lot of audibles into quick plays, and Jordan Mason did have a good amount of receptions and then catches after the run. So those are basically the same as a running play. We saw how Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers were able to overcome those situations with quick passes in obvious running situations, right? So we need to do better at those and do the exact same thing. And as you can see in quarter one and quarter three, it shows that KOC had every intention to get to focus on the running game and make this a balanced attack, because it's clear he knows that Jordan Mason is one of his most valuable assets. Now, he did revert and try to get us back in the game, and I get that, and it sucks to see, but it's a totally normal situation to have. Even the best teams become extremely one-dimensional. And just throw the ball over and over and over again, because that's what they feel they need to do. We saw that in last night's Sunday night football game. It was just pass after pass after pass. There was very little runs here and there. Like, the runs that they had were impactful, but it was a ton of passes. There was like 40 plus passes out of both quarterbacks or something like that. It was freaking insane. So it just goes to show that based on what the situation is, based on the adversity that you face, sometimes that's what's going to happen. But regardless of the fact, I still believe, and even in those situations where it feels like, okay, just need to avoid the run and just start throwing the ball, we need to still have that mindset that we had when Adrian Peterson was our running back, and say, you know what, we got a generational talent back there. Let's run the ball, regardless of everything saying that we should throw right now. and we need to have a little bit more confidence in our running game and create maybe some better schemes for when for different running plays for when we know this O line is falling apart. Maybe some more pitches to the outside so Jordan Mason can start a little bit further down and actually try to make some more break some tackles and try to get some more yards after contact, right? So doing things in order to set our running backs, Jordan Mason specifically, in a position to succeed. That is a massive factor that we need to do, and it always ties back to one thing that I've been harping on KOC is his inability to adjust on the fly and to take what's in front of him instead of going off of his 4D chess moves that he thinks are so important or so whatever. Sometimes you just need to keep it simple, stupid, do the freaking basics because the basics have worked for generations now. And KOC, I get it. He's an offensive minded coach, coordinator in this new era of analytics in which he's going to be more bound to that sort of situation and go off of that. But at some time, the dam's got to break, bro. And KOC, you need to understand how to adjust on the fly, and you need to have a little bit more conviction in the running game because it will be a massive, massive factor. And yeah, like even when we have injuries, like Alex is saying, we were doing well until that first drive. If O'Neal stays upright the entire game, that first drive probably would have been an indication of what we were to expect on all our scoring drives, right? It would have been more chances than not, and that having O'Neal go down. But like I ranted earlier about our O line, knowing that we are injured as much as we are and the injury bug continues to be a factor, how does Chris, our offensive line coach, not have our backups more than prepared with a main game plan if they do go in, and then if that doesn't fail, have a backup plan for them to try to execute, and then even then have a tertiary plan, whether that's shuffling the O-line around. Blake Brandell is a natural tackle. Why wasn't he rotated to right tackle? And why didn't we move other guys into left guard instead? Why were these type of options discussed prior or even game plan for in case the worst happens? I don't know. Maybe I'm just the type of guy that always looks at the worst case scenario first and then starts looking at other outcomes so that I can get a good rational idea to more accurate probabilities, so I don't focus on possibilities and focus on probabilities. I don't know if why I'm able to think like that and they're not able to. Maybe it's a factor of, like I said, we need to bring somebody else in to either replace Chris or bring in an opposing view so that they can actually brainstorm and be overcritical to their game plans so that they can create better ones, because what's going on right now is not acceptable. It just point blank, period, as the kids say these days. I can't believe that's the first time I've ever said that freaking stupid. Oh man, what is going on with me? 5 is this? Oh, this is 5 again. Sorry. Let me remove. I need to add another. I need to get to side 6. Is this 6? All right, so now let's look at the drive summary from the game, right? It was ugly, but first one, we got 11 plays, 51 yards, 7 pass, 4 runs, and we got a field goal out of it, right? The second one was a punt, 5 plays, 11 yards, 2 pass, 2 runs, and a sack, which blew up that freaking that drive. It just goes to show that O-line preparation, or maybe the blitz pickup, or even Carson Wentz's inability to call out the right pass protection was a factor there. Then we have drive 3, which was an interception. Then that one was definitely all on Carson Wentz. Drive 4, 9 plays, 81 yards. Interception. That's the interception that I don't really blame Carson Wentz because there are a lot of great defensive linemen getting up a hand and batting it up and for somebody else to come down with it. That can happen to the best quarterback. So I'm not too concerned with that in the slightest. The fifth drive, a punt again, 3 plays, -9 yards, and we ended up punting away. So that is incredibly bad. We took a sack there. It's just momentum destroying, it's confidence destroying, and it just leads to the fact that our O-line is not prepared for the absolute worst. We don't have backup plans. We don't have tertiary plans. We don't have rotations. Like, man, like I said, why wasn't Blake Randall over at right tackle? He's a natural tackle. Let him try to go there and let his natural instincts hopefully take over. Maybe he can do better. And then maybe we can rotate some other guys in and try to make it work better than we did, because it was rough. Why did we not try different things? I do not know. I continue to blame Chris. Now, let's look at the next 10 drives. Drive 6, interception. Oh, no, it's backwards. So, no, let's replaying that one. 11 plays, 33 yards. We have, man, I didn't realize that So, weird. So I took a whole bunch of notes on my iPad as I was watching the game, and then I converted it into text, and then I put it into ChatGPT for it to organize it all and fix it, and totally messed up all my drives because that's not how it went. That's all right. We'll move on. But either way, the next 4 drives, the thing that I wanted to point out to when it came to the next 4 drives is the fact that there was an inability for us to adjust, and mostly just pointing out our preparation from our backups to actually take control and actually be contributors instead of liabilities, right? So that is still going to be a factor that I'm going to harp on, and it just sucks, man. Mr. Mike, what's going on, buddy? So yeah. So when we look shift by situational shift by half, right? So if we look, we ran the ball 10 times in both halves, right? The pass was it definitely a lot more in the second half, and it's obvious why, because we were behind. We're trying to dig a hole out. But when we look at this, I think it's a little bit deceiving, because these numbers right away, immediately you're like, oh man, KOC, the play calling is trash. We need to move on. We need to get somebody else, because let's bring in an actual dedicated play caller, whatever it is. But when you stop and look, I've watched the game 3 times now, and what I saw was definitely different to what these stats are representing. Now, like I said earlier, there were a lot of plays that to me looked like they were running plays that Carson Wentz audibled out of, whether that was because he foresaw a quick pass or a screen or something like that was a better option than the run play that was dialed up, or he saw something that he thought, oh, I got to pass here because the defense is giving me this option. And so the pass, so that doesn't really reflect on play calling. On top of the fact that a lot of there were because of that, so that might increase the amount so if we attribute those short passes that Jordan Mason caught out of the backfield, it may look more balanced to pass versus run than just looking at these stats where it's just 10 runs in the first half, because Jordan Mason was really productive. He caught a lot of passes out of the backfield, and he had a lot of yards after carry, right? So that plays a factor. In the second half, a little bit of the same, but not as much. But another factor that I think plays into this is that the O-line and wasn't doing well, and as a result, the play calling was made regardless of how they were playing. They were still trying to call passing plays to try to bring this game back, instead of having some patience and seeing how our O-line was playing and trying to move to their strengths, right? Christian Darrisaw was great. Blake Brendel was great, right? So there was a lot of situations where we could have uh, flipped the weak side, right, and started throwing to that side or running to that side, which would have given our running game more teeth. And as a result, given KOC the confidence to keep calling running plays, right? So that is what it is. On top of the fact that after those two interceptions, we were kind of pot committed at that point to kind of throw ourselves out of it. And uh, on top of the audibles that Carson Wentz was doing, a lot of the sacks that he was taking, things stemmed from the inability of our backup O-line to come in and play at a higher level. Like again, it goes down to the preparation that our O-line has, and I think it's something that needs to be addressed going forward. Now, if we look at pressure impact, man, 6 freaking sacks. And look, the first one, we got a punt, right? There was then an interception. Like these sacks and this pressure caused a lot of turmoil. 2 interceptions, 4 punts off of drives that had the O lines held up. It changed the outcome in the trajectory of this game, right? So it just goes to show that there is a lot of work to be done by Chris, and maybe, like I said, somebody else needs to be brought in to either play devil's advocate or to take over and phase him out, because something is rotten in Denmark, as they say. Now, we do have some freaking things to be happy about. Like, look at Justin Jefferson's performance. 32, I mean, that is definitely not supposed to be there. But he was a high volume chain mover yesterday. He had two big plays, 22 yards and 22 yards and 29-yard gains, which continues to show his impact in the game. When we look at Jordan Addison, he was explosive. He's quiet at times, but once he made that defense play with his incredible route running, that 81-yard highlight play was incredible, right? So we still have a lot of things to be happy with, although our offense isn't working as isn't being as effective as possible, and they're not they're not able to execute what the game plan is, right? So key takeaways, uh this game was a pass centric offense. So 70% of the passes, if we just look at the passing numbers, that's terrible, right? If we continue to walk and come out of games with that being one of the takeaways, we have a problem. Like I said, Jordan Mason needs to be the focus of this offense. We need to go back to that stubbornness that we had when Adrian Peterson was our running back. Like, I still remember we were like down, it was like 3rd and 23, and Christian Ponder under shotgun with Adrian Peterson to his right, and they called a freaking draw play, and Adrian Peterson picked up like 27 yards. And that's just because he is that good. And we need to have a little bit of that delusion when it comes to our running game. Jordan Mason isn't Adrian Peterson. We probably will never see another Adrian Peterson ever again. Well, maybe some people can say Derrick Henry is, especially with his fumbling. But what I'm trying to say is that Jordan Mason's not him, but he has a lot of similar factors in the fact that the way that he runs the ball is impactful, and it will cause headaches to opposing teams. And if we stray away from it and we become more one-dimensional like we did this week, it's a recipe for failure. Now, game script does I remember I wrote this and I feel like ChatGPT messed it up. He didn't understand what I was saying. I was going to say the reason game script matters because when we look at the first quarter and we look at the third quarter, we can clearly see that KOC had every single intention to get Jordan Mason going, and he was not going to stray from the running game. It just didn't go that way, and his inability to have a little bit more conviction in our running game, even when it seems bad, especially in the second quarter. It shows that it is a problem. But those first two, that first drive, especially before O'Neal went down, I think it showed what the potential of this offense is with the either one of our quarterbacks uh, playing. Right, it's not going to be pretty. We're not going to be, it's not going to be like this dominant straight down the field and score a touchdown like we were seeing last night. But what it was is that we consistently moved down, even though we would have some negative plays. We consistently moved down the field and we put up 3 points. Next time it could be 7 points. Next time it could be 3 points. Then it could be 3 points. Then it could be 3 points. Then it could be 7 points. Whatever it is, when the game plan and the game script is followed, we have a great chance of putting up a good amount of points. It's not going to be no 50 bomb games or anything like that, but we have the ability, if we can keep that strategy, we can put up enough points uh, to beat opposing teams because our defense will keep them uh, to low scoring outputs, right? And with that being said, you might say, well, what happened yesterday, right? Like the defense couldn't stop the Steelers at times. And I agree, there were times that they couldn't do that, whether that was execution. There's also times where they did everything right. And then on that last play, they just couldn't seal the deal and get the offense off the field. And if in combination with our offense being maybe not perfect, but at least serviceable, it keeps the defense off the field and allows them to stay, you know, fresher and from being dog tired like they were at times because they were just on the field a lot. And regardless of how good a defense is, if your defense, even if you're the freaking 85 Bears defense, if they end up with freaking 60 defensive plays and we only have 10 offensive plays, it does not matter how good that defense is. That defense is going to get tired. They are going to be sucking wind, and that's no fault of theirs uh, at all, right? So the offense needs to play more of a factor. They need to get up to speed, at the very least, become serviceable. I'm not saying you need to be so good and put up 50 points or 40 points or even 35 points. But you know what? If you can consistently put up field goals, if you consistently can put up one or two touchdowns and running touchdowns, whatever the case may be, and you can put up 24, 27 points, 28 points, 31 points, 26, whatever it is, we have a shot at winning because this defense, given that the good amount of rest, because if they'll be on the offense will be on the field working enough, they will keep opposing teams to low scoring games, and then it's just a matter of clock management at the end of the games. And we have seen in especially in the Chicago Bears game that we have good clock management skills. Don't have we don't have the situations to actually put that into play. So, you know what I mean? So, needless to say, we need to improve our early down run efficiency. So, we need to make sure that on first down, second down, Jordan Mason is chunking down, making sure that we're at third and short, allowing Carson Wentz or JJ McCarthy to have way more options and not fall into being one dimensional. There were so many times where we would end up in third and long and they did not have to do anything except for send 3 or 4, and it was a detriment to this offense, which goes to show the importance of our running game and how we need to stick to it, even though the house may be burning down around us, right? We need to have that conviction. We need to have that composure from our head coach and his play calling. Next slide. Oh, that was the last slide. Let me see. We'll go back to that. Let me pull up my notes because I have a PowerPoint. But again, you know what? Regardless of what anybody wants to say, I am in I believe that yesterday's game was a hell of a game. It was a thrilling ride. It was the roller coaster that I love being on. And despite of the outcome, I'm extremely motivated that we are who I think we are. Not what they say they are, it's who I think they are. All my assessments up to here have literally proven um, basically every outcome, the weaknesses that we have, the things that we need to work on, all these things that I see from our team, the way that we have the ability to fight back from adversity, all these things are true that I've been banking on this team. And like I said, like I've been saying, our 2-2 record shows who we are. A Dr. Heckle and Mr. Hyde team. We can win, we can win, and we also are suffering a lot of growing pains, injuries, whatever you want to say, and we continue to not to have that be a factor. Thank goodness that we have a strong roster, great coaching staff, and even though I still think we need to be looking at what's going on with our offensive O-line coach, but regardless, we have a team that, regardless of how bad it looks, we will have a chance no matter what. Back in the day when it was the Carson Ponder era, and I think we won like 3 games the one season, there were a lot of games. I think I maybe only watched that season like 4 or 5 games, and every single time I saw a score like 24-3, 21-7, 6-14, I just shut off the game and moved on because I knew that we were not good enough to rally and bring the game back. That was not part of our identity. That was not our strength. We were very much a team that if we can't get ahead and run the ball hard first, we were going to lose. And that's what happened. So fast forward to now, we have a team that, regardless of what's going on, regardless of if the house is burning all around them, they will stay composed. They will fight, 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 and always give us a chance to come back and steal the win, even though we don't deserve that win. It's a sign of a great roster, a great team in the making. But like I said last year, that, and a lot of people came out, were upset at me when I said, I don't think that we can win the Super Bowl, right? Would I like to win the Super Bowl? Yes, because if we did win the Super Bowl, the confidence, the experiences gained by our coaching staff, our players, would transition into the JJ McCarthy era and give us a boost that would have been unparalleled. It didn't happen. It's okay. But like I said, this season needs to be a season where we faced as many learning situations as possible so that we can learn to overcome adversity. And that's exactly what we did. We fell behind in game because of our own mistakes, and then we learned from that, and then we fixed it. And then we fell behind in games because we got punched in the mouth, and then we learned from that, and then we fixed it. There were games where we started off extremely hot and then became extremely vanilla in the second half and almost lost games and even lost games. But we learned from that, and we moved on. That's why we are able to keep ourselves in games. That's why we're able to fight self-imposed adversity as well as adversity that's imposed by injuries as well as from the other team. And if that doesn't make you excited about this team and our future, I don't know what will, because I know I have been dying to have a team that was this capable to always give us a chance, right? We no longer have to rely on a generational running back. We no longer have to be like, we need a quarterback that can just throw it freaking, that's why we brought Sam Bradford in. That's why we brought freaking Kirk Cousins in, right? Like, no longer do we have to be a gimmick team. We are building towards a well-rounded team that is going to develop consistency throughout the experiences that we gather this year and going forward. And I anticipate that next year we will take a massive step like we always do. We always have taken a step since KOC started and since Brian Flores started, took over. We have consistently improved in a lot of areas. It's the reason why I don't lose it on KOC anymore. Year one, I used to lose my almost every single game. The play calling to me was horrendous. There was always these times where to me, it was like you'd see him on the sideline. He'd have this grin and he'd be like, oh, you could just tell, oh, he's dialing up some crazy 4D, like incredibly smart play, like overcomplicated, super like smart play. And then he'd try to force it. And then we'd we'd stall drives. We'd give away opportunities. We'd come away with nothing if instead of even just 3 points, or we'd just self-sabotage all the time. But I would be remiss to say that year after year after year, his play calling has gotten better. It's not perfect. I'm not going to say that it's gotten to perfect, and I'm not going to say that he still doesn't have things to work on, but it's gotten better. And the fact that it has is why I don't lose it anymore. On top of the fact, there was a lot of times when it came to what was another thing that used to bug me about KOC? Oh, how about last year? So many times we just like get punched in the mouth, and in the second half we just didn't know what to do. We just didn't have a game plan. When we look at at Brian Flores last year in the second half, so many people like, what happened, B-Flow? You went completely vanilla. We didn't do any disguising. We didn't do any of the crazy scheme work that you do. All of a sudden, what the hell happened? You know what I mean? And then this year, it's the opposite. It seems like our second half, that's when he's putting teams in the blender. And I don't know if it's a switch on his philosophy or his game plan, whatever it is, he's improved. So I'm not going to lose my cool on things that I'm seeing improvement on. Things that I don't see improvement on is from our O-line, how we're not able to keep these guys prepared, how we're not able to prepare our backups to go in there and perform as the game plan intends, and then not have a backup plan for when that strategy doesn't work, so then we can bring something else in. And how about we don't even have another even tertiary plan where we shuffle our players around? Like I said, Blake Brandel is a natural tackle. Why wasn't he thrown at right tackle and let him try to figure something out? And why didn't we bring somebody else in at guard? Why was no creativity in trying to overcome? It's as if they assumed that there wouldn't be any injuries, that everybody would be perfect, and then we just go through the whole game and none of that would be a factor. That's a stupid mistake to make at the NFL level. I'm sorry, that is unacceptable. We need to do better getting our backups prepared. It's just a problem, right? We haven't experienced this problem a ton in the past, so maybe it's a thing. So maybe that's why I get so frustrated with it, because I logically think, why don't we have more than one freaking game plan for this situation that is obviously going to be a factor all season, right? So I'll leave it at that, because I'll rant again about this O-line and our offensive line coach not being able to generate multiple game plans and not to have even different rotations to freaking plug and play when this stuff happens. Okay, it's a factor. Anything else? Let me look at my notes here. Like I said, first half, it was a balanced approach. It goes to show that KOC was looking to establish the run game. It just fell apart on them. The second half, the run was definitely virtually abandoned, and it sucks. And it's almost like clockwork when you are that far behind and you have to try to throw yourself back into it. But you know what? In the fourth quarter, even though we were trailing by 18, we were able to bring it back and give ourselves a chance. If Carson Wentz completes one of those two passes and one of our guys gets out of bounds, Will Reichert might well have kicked the tying field goal. Now I don't know if he would have won in overtime the way that it was going. I don't know if what would have gone on, but to know that we had that opportunity to force that, even after basically 3 full quarters of just not being able to adjust or do anything, the defense still gave us that option, and we were still able to rally and get a chance where most teams would have wilted, would have thrown in their backups, and just would have given up. That is something that needs to be applauded and something that we cannot lose focus on, because it is a factor that's going to keep us in games every single game this season, and it's going to be the reason why we win games that we should have lost. So keep that in mind. But like I said, predictable offense. But yeah, the success that we did have, we got to be happy. Justin Jefferson, 10 receptions, 126 yards. Jordan Addison, 4 reception, 114 yards. Definitely a huge factor. Like I said, I'm not going to crucify, even though to me, it's blatantly obvious that if we roll with Carson Wentz into the playoffs, that performance is something that we're going to see probably even worse, because teams in the playoffs are going to be better than the Steelers, right? So than the Steelers are right now. We don't know if they could have turned the corner and start, now the rust is shaken off, like I was saying beforehand, that very well could be a factor going into this game. But as of right now, like if we look at the top teams in the league, a lot of these teams would totally make Carson Wentz look 1,000 times worse. So it's obvious that we need to roll with JJ. Good, bad, ugly. He needs the reps. He needs to learn. And like I said in a previous live, if we let him go the rest of the season, there's a 35% chance that JJ proves to be him. There's also a 35% chance that he proves that he's not him. And then there's like 30% chance that we just can't, that I just can't fathom. And it's always, it's something that like, oh crap, you know what I mean? But there's a 70% chance at the end of the season, if we roll with him at the very end, we will know what we need to do. We'll either need to stick with him because he's showed enough and we know that he's gonna that this is the right path, or we're gonna know, okay, we overreached, he isn't him, we need to move on. Which veteran quarterback out there is not reclamation project, veteran established quarterback that can give us a chance to win can we bring in to try to salvage this next 1 or 2 years before we are forced to rebuild because we start losing everybody to contracts, to B-Flow leaving because he might get a better opportunity, things of that nature, right? So it is something to keep in mind. And I think that's it. I think those are all the notes that I have. Thank you so much for indulging in me in this breakdown, kind of going through everything that I see and the perspective that I have. Like I said, I am not in the slightest concerned of what's going on with this team. I know they will figure it out. I know that we are going to have a season like this. You know what? I was anticipating a lot worse lows, to be honest. To have the ability to have a team held to 15 points in the second game of the season, the Falcons, up until 3 minutes left in the game, that's a massive red flag. The fact that we were able to be resilient and even fight back under undesirable situations and almost have a chance, almost tie it and have a chance to bring this back is a massive factor. And we're going to have ugly wins. We're going to have spectacular wins. We're going to have ugly losses and we're going to have good losses. It's just going to be that type of season. And regardless of that, though, because we have a team that is going to always give us a chance to win, we will be always nipping at the bud at every wild card team, or we might even turn the corner in the second half of the season and start showing consistency that we wish we had right now. But unfortunately, development isn't linear. Injuries aren't always able to be game planned for or prepared for or even avoided. And that's just the way it is. And that's why we love football. Let's be real, guys. This is why we love football, to see teams go through the adversity and prove everybody wrong. So, just like those New York Giants did not defy the odds last year, we will continue to defy the odds, and we will be always within a shot of winning the game, or uh, having a shot at doing something this season. I wholeheartedly believe that, and I'm 1,000% confident that by the end of the season, we will look like a much better team than we were in the early part of the season at our worst. Mark my words. I have no doubt that JJ McCarthy will bounce back, and as he gets more reps, he will continue to embarrass all the morons that said we should roll with Carson Wentz. Well, that's it, guys. I'm going to leave it there. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. I will be going live every single day. We are on the road to 500 subscribers. I'm hoping to get that by the end of the calendar year. Thank you so much for everybody popping in here. Zoe from In the Zone podcast, Mr. Lefty, Mav Henry for coming in, Alex Rush, and Mr. Mike Sports Fives. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today and talking football. Well, I gave you my honest opinions and thoughts of this last week's game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we'll leave it at that. Skol Vikings, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great one. I love you guys all, even if